change, of drought. What's happening essentially is and it's interesting, under the Rio Grande Compact, the measuring point for delivery of water to Texas, and this is a compact that was signed in the 30s, hasn't been changed, is Elephant Butte Dam. And so basically the water that goes over the dam is the measurement for Texas. Well, what's happened below Elephant Butte Dam, because all the farmers and ranchers below the dam are not getting any surface water because of the drought, guess what they're doing? They are pumping, and they are pumping, and they are pumping. And it's all interconnected. Obviously, when you pump the aquifer, the river comes in and soaks right back in, and rather than going to Texas, the water is going back into the aquifer, and Texas is not getting its allocation. And so, well, yeah, and it's this is the whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting, and here we go. This is going to be it's extraordinarily important, and it's part of a discussion of water policy, and we can talk a little bit about that. We in New Mexico, I think, have, in my time, I've been on the water committee since I showed up. We're very bad at being proactive. We're pretty good at being reactive. But we desperately need to deal with adjudications in this state. We need to put the resources into actual water planning. I mean, maybe that's part of the Marshall Plan when it comes to water. I just will tell you, this is the single biggest issue that doesn't get talked about enough when you look at the economic development of the state in the future. Quite frankly, when you look at the sustainability of this state in the future. So it's a huge issue, and we should all be watching that. Just real quick on the, again, it's fun to have the new guys, and I want them to talk to you all, but I've introduced a number of pre-filed bills. Corporate tax, campaign was mentioned, and then Senate Bill 18 is on genetically modified GMOs and requiring disclosure labeling. We already have that in New Mexico. We have a labeling statute, and this simply makes a little tweak to that labeling statute to say that if there's a product that contains GMOs, let's at least let consumers make that decision about whether to purchase those at the store. So I think it's something that needs to be discussed in this country. It's being discussed in this country. David and I were commenting. Interestingly, some of the industry that's on the side of GMOs is now talking to Congress about a labeling bill. So sometimes, things work their way up from the bottom, and that's what's happening across this country with this issue. So we'll have that discussion in the legislature this session, and certainly we can talk about ways you all can help with that.
Cool. Good. Very good.
So I'm a student at Northern New Mexico College, and as I came from New Jersey, so I didn't get the lottery scholarship, but as a member of student government, I know that it's hugely important for many students, and it's not solvent currently. People are spending less money at the lottery, and so there's some risk of some students not getting funded by the scholarship. What's the legislature looking at to fix that?
Well, beyond the money, people spending money less on the lottery, you have tuition that's gone up as well. So that's part of the reason for the insolvency. And I haven't been to any of the interim committees. I don't know where they're talking about this, but it's interesting because as being a citizen legislature, I've ran on the point of putting the people's voice back in the roundhouse. So as I've been on the exercise bike at lunch for the last couple of weeks, I've actually opened up discussion next to me, and the gentlemen that were riding next to me, and so it was actually the time flew by, and so it comes down to it, and certainly we're going to get our opportunity to weigh in, and so I was at least in our discussion with these other gentlemen that were there. And I wish there was some females that were there riding so they could have weighed in as well, but there wasn't at that time. And this was for 3 consecutive days. And so, if you just do it just by grades only, how do you start to rate different schools? Some schools, their grading system might be a little more rigorous than others. And some child that has a better grade or has a lesser grade in a different school that might be a little more rigorous might get left out. And so we were thinking along the lines that this should be tied to a formula where it's grade specific and times a multiplier of maybe your ACT score. And then also put a component in there as well that if for families that are making whatever the value is, over 200,000 or 150,000 or whatever, maybe those children aren't eligible, and put a higher component on it for people that are of lesser means. And so these were some of the thoughts that had come out of this conversation. And so this would be something that I think those ideas were actually done I think they were smart ideas. The other idea is to apply this formula that I just spoke of. And you can imagine wherever the cutoff line, because now we're not going to be able to give scholarships to all the kids. But whatever that cutoff line is, maybe there's going to be a big group of kids, maybe just at 80% you just use this formula, and the other 20% you let each individual school at their own discretion pick the last children, because they have groups of kids that might look attractive to them, such as a kid that spends a lot of time in music or has done a lot of community service. I mean, maybe his grades he missed the cut by a little bit, but it had tremendous community service, and maybe that school thinks he's an asset to them or she's an asset to them. So these were some of the ideas that were spun off of this, and this is something that I would certainly entertain.
I'm going to go to Michael. Raphael, you got a question? Then we'll go back to you. I'll get back there. So, Michael.
Hi, this would be a question to either one of you, I guess. Senator Candelaria mentioned the timidity as far as approaching something like a Marshall Plan. I've been concerned for years about the timidity of the congressional delegation, except maybe Domenici, and as far as being bold on the wrong way, I think. But as far as the labs, and I'd just like to see somehow a spark, fire lit under Udall and Heinrich and Lujan, because I don't think they're doing enough as far as cleaning up the labs and regulating the labs more, and maybe going towards alternative science. So I don't know if there's an answer to that, but could either of you address that as far as their timidity?
Use Michael pass to Raphael. They can use the cord. Do you have the cord mic still?
Oh, sorry. I think, one of the challenges right at a federal level when it comes to the labs and when it comes really to our state as a whole is that under our current economic structure, we are heavily leveraged on federal funds to make up a large portion of our operating budget in this state. And so I think that, for recent memory, the task has sort of been playing defense, and ensuring that when the nation is looked at and where cuts are being made, that New Mexico doesn't really feel the full force of that hammer. And I think that, I thank the congressional delegation for really leading that charge. At a state level, the frustration that I have going in, and I'll just speak from a very personal place to answer the question, is, where's the vision for the state of New Mexico from this administration? I don't see it. We can have conversations about issues like driver's licenses till we're blue in the face, but it's a political conversation, and it's being done so that it fits into a nice campaign mailer and into a 30-second, TV spot, and the classic kind of 10-word answer. And so, I don't think that there is a lack of folks who are committed and passionate on both sides of the aisle in Santa Fe and in the Roundhouse, having worked there. There's some amazing folks. The question is, there has to be leadership, and I think there's that vacuum right now. And it starts at the top. And I think that the governor, I would be more than happy to entertain if she would come to us with a vision that laid out where she wants the state to be in 10 years. I think we'd all be willing to come to the table and try to get there. Because I think we could agree on what that vision is. We want to see us not be 49th in education. We want to see income inequality go down. We want to see our economy turn around and unemployment go down. I think there's some fundamental things we can agree on. But in the absence of that roadmap, we're kind of left, as a legislative body, having to craft the agenda ourselves. And I think there's a tremendous energy with new folks from all over the state coming in to do that, where as the administration has failed to lead, that the legislature can step up and take up that leadership position on some of these critical issues.
Good. Rafael, let's go to you.
Yes, I understood that, and I may be wrong, that the compact around the Rio Grande was actually voluntary. That was just that it wasn't actually a legal compact. This is, that was just I have some other questions I wanted to ask about, but.
No, it is a legal compact. Let me assure you. Yes, it is, and it allocates water between Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas, and so. And the super challenge is that it was done in probably a very smoke-filled room in 1934 with all the doors shut and no idea that we'd be dealing with the things we're dealing with today. And yet there's incredible fear about opening it up and looking at what might be done differently. But yes, it is illegal. And that's why it goes straight up to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court. Wow.
The whole issue with water, I also wanted to bring up the question, and I don't know who to address it to, but as a general question, it seems that right now, from what I've read and understood, the arrangement, let's put it that way, between gas and oil drilling companies and the expansion of New Mexico underground resources for energy, has so few caps on it that it strongly affects, and the same applies to the lab, it strongly affects the amount of pollution that is going on in terms of fracking, in terms of radioactivity getting into the water. All these issues seem to be there seems to be no accountability with that. It seems to be, in fact, the other way around, that our governor, for one thing, is bending over to assist the gas and oil industry to essentially pollute what little water we do have. I'm wondering if you would address that.
They're pushing it to me. I'll do it, though. Absolutely. This is an oil and gas state. There is no question about that. Amazingly, the fines under the Oil and Gas Act for a number of different violations were set in the 30s, and they've never been changed. I tried to carry a bill to change those fines with Governor Richardson's support. Got to the first committee, and not much further. So, again, you're absolutely correct. Generally, this is a state that has been dominated by oil and gas. And let me just say this, too. I mean, let's not sit here and just completely, trash the oil and gas industry. They are providing the severance taxes that come from this are a huge piece of our budget. And quite frankly, without that, we'd be in extraordinarily trouble right now. Let me give you an example, though, of a place where the opposite applies, where we were actually able to do something, and it's something that happened here in Santa Fe County, I think is where it really started, where we were actually able to get out front of the industry and now have in place something that I think is amazingly important. And, David was part of this back in 2007, 2008, I believe. Tecton Energy came in here and wanted to drill in the Galisteo Basin. And of the time I've been in the legislature, I've never seen the level of citizen engagement that we saw during that process. And what it resulted in was, at the state level, we were able to delay the permitting process for Tecton, and finally Governor Richardson agreed to do that and gave Santa Fe County the time that it needed to put in place an oil and gas ordinance that I think is a model for this country, and something that our citizens stepped up, our representatives at the county commission level stepped up and did. Well, guess what this administration wants to do now is to preempt all these local ordinances. And I want to let you all know, because this is an example where we were successful. And now this is high on the list of the oil and gas industry effort over at the session, which is to roll this back, which would mean that we would have oil and gas drilling in El Dorado. The Secretary of Energy, John Bemis, came through for a confirmation hearing. He's a great member of our community. He's a constituent, a very smart individual, a very good oil and gas lawyer, and he wanted me to carry his confirmation. And I told him, John, I have real questions that I need to ask you during this process. And so I don't want to be sitting as your champion because I need to ask those questions. And when he came through, my first question to him was, what's his position on this issue of preemption? And he said the mineral right is the dominant estate. And basically, we do not think that local government should come in and interfere with that. And so the next question I asked, would you support drilling in El Dorado? Yes. And I slowly worked my way into town. I got a yes to every single place that I mentioned. And I got to Santa Fe Plaza, and the only thing that would stop the drilling there is the cost of the surface remediation or however that would work. So it's a very different vision, and this is an important issue. And I'm talking in detail because I want to be also positive about what we all can do, because this is an example, and that's one where we need to step up.
We have a question here.
Let me just follow up with that. The battle is on in San Miguel County and Mora County right now. And we're going to be having people from both those counties come to talk about how the battle's going on there. But this preemption will be a battle royal, and I think we can all involve ourselves in it. I think we'll have the counties coming up to fight it, so it'll be a great battle. So, next question.
I'm interested in your comment about vision, and there's the 3 E's, right? There's the economy, there's the environment, but how about education? And I'm glad to hear you mention that, we're 49th in the state. I'm a retired public school teacher, and when we talk about education, we get into these microcosmic, issues on Common Core curriculum and testing and everything. But my interest is in why don't we have a vision for early childhood education? Because we're always talking about our graduation rates and our national standing. But is there anything happening in the new legislature this year for mandating, either through a memorial or a bill, that our children can come into school at the age of 3 and start the educational process at an early age? I can't understand, of course I was a kindergarten teacher, I can't understand why we're so focused on higher education, which I acknowledge. I mean, we're all fighting for those dollars. But early childhood, to me, is such a key component for changing the educational vision, for our state. And I think education is very much related to the environment, as Representative Trujillo is an embodiment of that. And the environment is related to the economy. It's all together. But I just think we need to focus more on our education for the people of the children of New Mexico. And
the future of New Mexico.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The budgets have just been released by the legislature and by the governor. And in the legislative budget, we do contemplate increasing funding for pre-K education and services, as well as K3+, which is basically extended school day for certain students. We'll also see, and I'll come back to that in a minute, because I'd like to give you all kind of a rundown of the education budget and some issues that I see that are pretty important there. We'll likely see a bill again this year asking for a constitutional amendment to increase the amount of money that comes off of the interest on our land grant permanent fund, and to directly invest that money in early childhood education and development services across the state of New Mexico. I support that question going to the voters. At the end of the day, the people, you and I, we own that permanent fund. The legislature doesn't own it. Every New Mexican has a right to decide how that money is used, because it is the royalties off of our land that funds it. So I think allowing the voters to weigh in and decide once and for all if they value early childhood education and if they want to make a critical investment using the resources of our land to support it. And I'll come back to the education budget. our public school teachers in New Mexico have not seen an increase in 5 years now. At the same time, gas prices have increased, food has increased, rent has increased. We're asking state employees across the board, and we're also asking public school teachers especially, to do a lot more with a lot less. At the same time that salaries have been flat, we are going to be asking employees to contribute more to their retirement to save our retirement funds. And we're also going to ask the state and local school districts to chip in more money. And then this is where the issue arises, and I want to bring it to people's attention today. The governor's budget contemplates, I think we saw, the Albuquerque Journal at least had a front page story, governor wants more money for education. Well, when you factor in the increased contributions to retirement that school districts will have to make, you factor in that things just go up in price every year, like keeping the lights on and opening the doors. Her budget actually is a flat or slight decline in education funding in New Mexico. We are spending less today an adjusted rate on K-12 education than we were in 2008. So at the end of the day, the numbers, the math is math. And the executive budget constitutes a cut in K-12 education. And I will have real serious trouble supporting a budget that has that kind of issue moving through it. I think you raised just a critical question as well when it comes to education in New Mexico, about the purview of the legislature. As a legislative and as politicians, right, I respect teachers in many ways, but I respect them because I know I could never be a teacher. I don't have that skill set, and it amazes me that some people have that gift, and I'm glad they do. I mean, our society functions because some people have that gift and that talent. I don't have it. We have a real serious question coming to us, though, about these ideas of third grade retention, of the evaluation of teachers, etc. And I really hope that throughout that debate, we can try and get away from the politics of it all a bit and start focusing a bit more on what do teachers need in the classroom, and how do we have a successful education system when, again, we have some of the poorest kids in the country. I mean, these are kids who are coming to school who haven't eaten, who are in very unstable family situations. And to expect every single child to fit a one-size-fits-all model, that they come to school ready to learn, they're going to take a standardized test. If they don't pass that test, we hold them back on the third grade, which research has shown through decades is the largest predictor of high school dropout, is being retained in the earlier grades. I really think we're going to have a serious philosophical conversation this session on some of these bills. I do not support third grade retention. I will not vote for third grade retention.
Great. We got about 10 minutes. I want to get to 2 more questions. So if we can just do that, I'm going to jump to Marge right now.
Okay.
And then get Gail.
Thank you. I applaud the new legislator from Albuquerque for your holistic view of several issues. My question regards what you said about provider shortage. I've been using energy medicine for about 20 years. I can't use it on Medicare. It's not going to be applicable for the new Affordable Care Act. I'm wondering if this might be a window open under a provider shortage for energy medicine applications and providers to start getting included in the healthcare system.
Explain energy medicine.
Energy medicine, as I see it, falls within complementary healthcare, and it deals with energy. Yes, let me give you some of the applications. It starts, in my view, from nutrition to chiropractic, acupuncture, flower essences, etc., etc., etc.
I'll be quick. I think that a lot of these other forms of healthcare delivery should be part of the conversation in New Mexico. The fact is, we just don't train and produce enough MDs in New Mexico that stay to practice here. So looking at other tiers or other ways of providing healthcare, I think, has to be part of the conversation. My concern here, and the bill that I'll introduce, is simply designed to start asking the questions and having the conversation, because I don't think it's one that we've been having as a state, and I really think we need to elevate questions like yours in the public debate and put it on the table for action soon, because it's critical. You know, it was a bad situation before, but now we're looking at some pretty tough results. But thank you.
Either of you guys want to follow up? You guys, okay? Gail, and then who?
Sit here so you can get a better picture.
I'd like to get, is this working? Back to the issue where y'all were talking about the fracking of oil and gas regarding Raphael Wiseman's question. I came from Fort Worth, Texas, and Dallas, Plano, that area 3 years ago, thinking I was escaping from all that and finding that my work on a committee with 5 neighborhoods where I was the only non-landowner and working on leases and gas oil leases in urban environment. And what New Mexico hasn't seen, which Texas didn't see in a lot of areas, was that most of the fracking and oil and gas wells were in rural areas, out of sight, out of mind, not in urban areas where you have schools. What's happened, I left in 2009, and when I began there in 2006, within a mere 3 years, thousands of gas wells going on in urban areas, next to schools, next to homes, like in El Dorado. And what they're finding is that the rate and decline of property values plummeted to nearly 50% if you were having one of these gas and oil wells. And what happens when they put these fracking wells is they go up, they frack, they pull it down to ground level with all these batting of to combat noise and light and trucks and things that are happening. And then they go back up again another 15, 16 times till they're through. So this is an ongoing thing, but what you're looking at now are thousands of wells around urban areas, what they're doing with this water, how you're utilizing this water. So they're going to take millions of gallons per well one time, thousands by, you add that up, you're talking trillions of gallons or billions of gallons of water, which is not being reused in the ways that Carl is talking about. They're talking about venting. What happens, people don't realize, is they vent these wells at night during... Yeah. Well, I just want a couple of the things that are... they vent these wells, and what they find is the increasing healthcare costs, which no one's looking at that, just like you're looking at in Gallup and such. The deterioration of the roads, and all of these factors, which are not things that these companies are looking at as costs. And we have to look at the overall costs and the overall fact with health, loss of property values, the decline of our health, our lands, water, and everything else. It's a big thing. If you haven't seen it, go see it. We need to get people enraged about this and say, no urban fracking anywhere, and even rural.
Here you go, Gail. I got one more.
Not counting gas wells, too. How about lighting our water on fire?
Nobody wants to respond to that one?
I think we addressed it. I mean, that's exact. It is. You
We
are.
don't have urban drilling here yet, and people don't, until they see it,
We have it
they
in
don't
farming.
realize it.
Yeah, we do have it in different parts of the state. We don't have it here in Santa Fe. I think one of the things that you're dead on in so many different. This is the heart of an arts and culture, of an environment, economic development base. And let's not forget for 1 second, and I have this discussion, and it's not an easy discussion to have on the floor of the Senate, when my friends from the oil and gas parts of the state stand up and they're talking about oil and gas is the only thing going on. It's not the only thing going on. I mean, this is an incredible community. Look, we've got, our unemployment rate is actually going, Mayor Koss said yesterday, it's going down. You know, we're creating jobs here in Santa Fe with a living wage, with a whole, range of aggressive interests by this community, and I just think that bringing in oil and gas, if we think that's going to help this economy, there is no question in my mind that it would result in exactly those types of property value issues. You think people are going to travel to come see Santa Fe if we've got oil and gas wells, all throughout town?
It's not pretty.
It's not pretty. That's a great way to put it.
I'm going to thank Jacob for raising up these abstract issues such as leadership, vision, collaboration, something that I think here in New Mexico we're in great short supply of, or we don't have collaborative structures that promote it. And perhaps a personal example, I had an opportunity to facilitate Governor Richardson's DWI comprehensive strategy, his interagency strategy, and we looked at everything from prevention right through to corrections and came up with a very comprehensive plan, only to put it into the legislature to get killed. So what are your thoughts about how do we develop these abstract capacities for leadership, for vision, in a state that we're so heavily bureaucratized?
That's a tough one. It's I don't know if I have a specific answer, directly or things that we could do, to change the process by which we operate. I think that there's some room, though, and it's something that I've adopted, so I'll answer from a personal space, is that when you look at these things, it's very easy to look at the challenges that face us and adopt a very deficit perspective, right, and operate from a place of panic and operate from a place of desperation. And I think what Peter's touched upon today, too, is that we have a lot of resources in this state. We have a lot of the key ingredients to make something happen. And I think the more we kind of try and adopt that viewpoint, that we're willing to come to the table and build on our strengths as a state, there's some room to collaborate there. Because when we're always meeting each other, right, on the field of battle when it comes to these issues, and we're always adopting this deficit, emergency, zero-sum game mentality that arises out of that, there's not much room for raising the critical questions, and there's not much room for thinking outside of the box, and there's not much room for saying something stupid or saying something dumb or trying an idea or proposing an idea that maybe isn't the most well-crafted one, but it's worth asking the questions. I mean, from a personal place, that's how I approach it, or I hope to approach it. What we do at a broader level. I don't know if, Peter, you'd like to weigh in from your experience.
I'll just say one thing that we are doing. We have 35 new members of the New Mexico legislature, and let me just say how impressed I am with the two gentlemen sitting here next to me. This is where it starts, and this is all of us. Let's be honest here. I mean, this is our system, and when you engage and when you participate, and most importantly, when you get out and vote. Again, we get folks that are willing to have this kind of a discussion, that are coming in for the right reasons. And so I think I'm incredibly encouraged. And I always try and remain optimistic. And maybe, the front end, we kind of go into the session smiling. By the back end of it, it is a brutal process. Put me in a dark room. I sometimes feel that way. But I'm still optimistic and encouraged.
Good. I'd just like to respond to the question back there on education. On education, as Senator Candelaria alluded to, was the permanent fund. Our permanent funds here in the state of New Mexico are worth $16 billion. They're the second largest in the country, next to Alaska. And the particular fund that he was speaking of is the Land Permanent Fund, which is a little bit over $11 billion.